how do we make AI accessible to our people to make them more productive? How do we embed AI in our products to make them easier to use and more powerful in terms of their ability to turn data into communications that drive action? And then the third pillar, the most important pillar arguably, is about governance.
How do you see your industry shifting with AI over the next couple of years?
So I think we are going to, as businesses, and for us as the conduit between businesses and consumers, facilitate a level of personalization that we have not seen before. I think that we're moving away from communications and towards conversations. And what I mean by that is people don't want notifications to say your renewal is due on your car insurance. They want to be able to engage, converse, and convert. They want first contact resolution.
This episode is brought to you by Instant Impact. Instant Impact provides transformative talent solutions to small and mid-sized companies that are making between 30 and 500 hires each year. If your recruitment's giving you a headache and you don't know where to start, then give the team at Instant Impact a call or visit www.instant-impact.com for more information. Hello and welcome to We Need to Talk About AI. I'm your host, Felix Mitchell. Now, if you asked me which companies had the best chance to capitalize on AI a year ago, I would have said without hesitation, mid-sized companies. I'm pretty sure I can point to the episode. I would have assumed that they were more agile than their larger competitors and that they had just enough budget to get it right, certainly more than the smaller companies. However, the data is showing something really different. Larger corporates have the budget to throw at transformation and find it easier to sign off the cost, especially if they can show that they're able to reduce headcount. And smaller startups have the agility and the risk appetite to move quickly. Meanwhile, mid-sized companies are really lagging behind and they're getting stuck in legacy systems, bureaucracy, or maybe even risk-averse culture. But some mid-sized companies are getting it right, and there's no reason why we can't succeed where we failed so far. My guest today is Sami Aintaoui. He is the CEO of MBA Group, a business that is doing some really interesting work with AI, and I would say having more success than most businesses I've spoken to when it comes to the messiness around adoption. Sami, welcome to the show.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So there's so much to get into, but I wonder if we could just start with you giving us a bit of an overview of your journey with AI and technology at MBA Group.
Sure. So MBA is a mid-sized corporate. We are about 300 people strong. We've got a turnover about 120 million, and we're really focused on customer communication. So we're helping large enterprises connect with their customers. And what we do is we help them turn that data into a meaningful communication that drives an outcome for them. So that could be anything from an email or a text or a phone call or a piece of print. We handle all of those different contact points. So as you sort of suggested, we are really having to keep pace with everything that's happening in AI. As an emerging technology, because it can be a very powerful way of increasing engagement and helping you refine those relationships that you're building with customers through those small touch points.
And it's such an interesting industry to be in, because I think if you have a conversation with even a layman about AI and the impact it's going to have on different industries, I reckon 9 out of 10 times they're going to say, well, marketing and communications, there is an industry that is going to be completely disrupted by this technology. So I'd be interested in whether, in your organization, whether you're seeing AI as more existential threat that you have to deal with, or more opportunity that you're excited by.
It depends what day what day it is and what I was talking about the day before. I think, you do fluctuate between a dystopian future and one that's full of opportunity. I think I'm a very optimistic person, so I like to think that it creates a big opportunity for us at MBA Group. Getting it right is really difficult. I think it depends on where you read your statistics, but it's something like about a year ago, there was a report that was in Forbes that was run by MIT, and they said that 95% of all AI pilots fail. 95%. And I think we've never really been in a place as a society or as a group of businesses, as an economy, where we're running headfirst into a technology with such a high fail rate. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that we are feeling an incredible amount of pressure as businesses to keep pace, because we can see what a disruptive technology it is. So some of it comes out of urgency, and some of it comes, we act for some reasons it's urgency, but for other reasons I think we see the opportunity there as an MBA Group.
And it's interesting that you're saying, running headfirst into the technology. One of the things I've never seen before, whether you're talking about technology or any other change, is I really feel that boards or investors or whatever it is, like interested stakeholders, are going to CEOs and leadership teams and just going, what have you done with AI? It's almost like this sort of end in itself.
Yeah.
I know you guys aren't like that, but how are you making sure that when you're using tech or implementing or building technology, that it's pointing in the right direction strategically?
I think we have a very, very simple sort of framework and strategy. So we really look at it from three lenses. The first thing is, how do we make AI accessible to our people to make them more productive? That's really our first pillar. How can our team use AI to be more effective every day? The second pillar is, how do we embed AI in our products to make them easier to use and more powerful in terms of their ability to turn data into communications that drive action? And then the third pillar, the most important pillar arguably, is about governance. So we are just preparing as we speak. We just had an internal audit last week to go for 42001, which is an ISO accreditation, a brand new one, or relatively new one, around AI governance. So that's kind of at the highest level. That is how we kind of look at everything. And we have an AI board that comes together once a month, more frequently if we need to look through all of the use cases that are being proposed by our people. And I think a lot of the time, to your point, there's this top-down mentality where it's like, we must use AI. What are we using AI for? But actually, a lot of the answers are already there in your team. ChatGPT, for example, is used more during the weekday than it is on the weekend. And that tells you very clearly that people are using ChatGPT in your organization right now, whether they have permission to or not. So your team are probably already using AI to augment what they do. And the way we kind of started our journey and got on the path to where we are today is just by asking people, gave them an amnesty poll, if you like, an AI amnesty poll, and just said, what are you using? How often are you using it? And what are you using it for? And I think that took a lot of the fear away, and then we could start breaking down some of those walls and going, right, that is a really powerful use case. Let's go and invest in that tool. And I think it's a lot easier to start by working on that pillar, if you like. How do I make my people more effective? Than it is, how do I build a product that people want to buy that's AI native? And that is where we started it.
You know what? An observation for you. You are, I think, my first guest talking about AI, who within the first couple of sentences said something along the lines of, spoke to the team and found and sort of gathered up all of the use cases. And that level of sort of bottom up creation, sounds like it might be one of the keys to getting the team on board. You mentioned the MIT study. One of the things that I find really interesting is, of those 95%, what's gone wrong, I would imagine, is not tool selection, but on getting people behind the change. You must have done something right to get your team thinking about the use cases. It feels like quite a commercial way of thinking. So how did you manufacture that?
I just think that there is obviously this culture developing where there's this use of shadow AI, I think is the terminology that people use to describe when someone's using an unapproved tool. And it was just so evident to me. I could see it turning up in emails. I could spot those signs. I've been using ChatGPT for long enough to spot those clues. So I think that's the first thing, is you start to see it, and you can start to see certain individuals embracing it, and their emails are a little bit punchy, a little bit more informative, and you can obviously see why there's merits to it. So I don't think listen, I'm a massive proponent. I'm always pushing the agenda to say, you could help yourself here. This could be a little bit easier. Have you thought about doing this? These are the things that I do. So it's a gentle push, but I think that's been adopted, and it's become a cultural thing. And very, very recently, I said to our head of HR, Tony, are we actually interviewing for AI competency? Are we asking, what did you do to prepare for this interview using AI? How would you use AI to better your productivity in this role? And I think that is the new expectation that everyone should have going into interviews now. That's sort of one of the milestones in cultural adoption is, are you interviewing for it on entry, not just pushing it, day to day.
I think that's so right, and it's advice that we give a lot of our clients as well when they're saying, well, how do we screen out people using for AI? The question back is, well, why would you screen them out when they're going to join your business and then immediately be trained on how to use Copilot?
Yeah.
So I think McKinsey just recommended AI chatbots to use as part of the interview process. I think that's
okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's a cool way of thinking about it. I feel like we're in the foothills of some of where AI is going to help us assess people, but then also help us break down, all right, what makes a good instant impact MBA Group hire? What does that mean today? What does that mean in 5 years' time? If anyone can think in 5 year cycles,
I know. Terrifying
anymore.
Yeah.
Great to have spoken about culture. I'd also, given your industry, and given some of the things that I know you guys are doing, it'd be great if you could share, because you said you didn't start thinking, okay, well, what can we do with our product set here? I think you're one of the first businesses I've spoken to, certainly one of the first professional services or services business I've spoken to. Am I right in thinking you've built your own technology?
Yep. Yeah, we have. We've integrated multiple sort of AI use cases within our product set, and we've kept that relatively simple. I think the reason 95% of these projects fail is because of this concept. I think it's called the jagged frontier, and essentially that is the inconsistencies that you get from AI, right? So it can write you a whole app in a few prompts, but it struggles to tell you how many R's are in strawberry. It's the sort of age-old example. So when you're actually integrating into products, it represents quite a significant risk, and the broader the remit you allow for AI to make decisions, the more likely you are to get inconsistencies, and that's a big risk reputationally, right? Our AI implementations to date, I think the oldest is probably coming on for, I mean, in the modern day sense, is probably 2 or 3 years old, but we've been using AI voice, for example, for much longer. But all of our implementations have been very focused, repeatable tasks, where the technology is a little bit more robust, because we're not asking it to make complex decisions necessarily. So that's what our journey has been so far. I do think that jagged frontier, as if you like, is starting to smooth a little bit, and it's becoming a bit more reliable. And I think, maybe this year will be the year where you can do things more agentically and get more reliable results. And I think that will be a big change for all of us, both those that are working products and those that are running processes. That has been the limiting factor for so many organizations and so many products, is that just agentically, it's not been as reliable, even when you build in feedback loops and, referencing memory through a process. It's just not been reliable enough. I think that's starting to change, and that's exciting.
It does feel like that. I think we're a week into the Claude Co-work release, and I've seen some really cool use cases for that.
Yeah.
How do you see your industry shifting with AI over the next couple of years?
So I think, firstly, as consumers, we are starting to expect hyper-personalization. I don't want to put a simple phrase into Google and get relatively refined results. I want the answer to my exact question.
Which is scary in itself.
Which is scary in itself. Yeah, it certainly can be. So I think we are going to, as businesses, and for us as the conduit between businesses and consumers, facilitate a level of personalization that we have not seen before. I think that we're moving away from communications and towards conversations. And what I mean by that is people don't want notifications to say your renewal is due on your car insurance. They want to be able to engage, converse, and convert. They want first contact resolution. And you can't do that through personalized notifications. You have to be able to facilitate conversations. And if that's human to human, that's really expensive. That's why no one answers the phone anymore or hides their number, on their website. But with AI, we can actually start bridging that gap. So I think that's going to be the big noticeable thing. And then I think the second to that is probably how it's going to affect our people and organizations, the structure of organizations. If you think about the org chart, traditionally there's one person at the top, 3 under that, 8 under that, and it's a triangle. But with agentic AI being more reliable on repeatable tasks and simple decision making, beware of the diamond, because a lot of those entry level roles will start disappearing and being replaced by agentic AI. And that's gonna create a new problem for business leaders. You guys have been around 15 years, which is an incredible achievement, but you still want to be around in 15 more years.
Certainly do.
So what do you do about that? You get the win because you don't need the admin roles, but where's that next tranche of managers coming from? So as business leaders, you need to start thinking a little bit differently about how you see ROI. It can't just be we've removed all the entry roles, because you're going to end up with a fat middle and no one there to replace them in the future if there's no entry roles.
Yeah, and I think one of the things that we're seeing in the talent world, which can kind of help thinking around this sort of stuff, is moving away from thinking about job titles and thinking more around work that needs to be done. You can then split that up into work that's better done by people and work that's better done by technology and AI.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I like that.
And then when you take the subsets of work that's best done by people, I think what businesses need to do is to shake off assumptions they have around seniority for task. Could in a world where basically you can store all of your institutional knowledge on an AI, what's stopping a junior member of the team building a full campaign and managing that? They can have access to all of the knowledge. So where do they add unique value? Where does someone who's got 15, 20 years of experience add unique value? I mean, it's a huge task.
Yeah.
But it's also really exciting. And I think the challenge, you mentioned entry level folks, the challenge that people have coming into the job market, I reckon, for the next couple of years is it's going to take companies 2 years at least to figure out how to do all of that. So
no, I mean, that is a big shift. That is a big shift in thinking, and I like that. the way you simplified that in terms of breaking it down into jobs to be done rather than jobs. And it's a good take. I think it's going to be really challenging for organisations to change the way they're organised to think in that way, because we are using very traditional methodologies for organising work, aren't we?
Yeah.
So it's a big departure from that. I think we have to all be very conscious, though, about still making time to nurture talent. We run an apprentice program. It's small. We're a mid-sized corporate, obviously. It's small, but I think that is a fantastic route into work. And all of those people that are joining our apprentice programs who are very young, they're not quite AI native, but they are faster adopters. And I think I saw a statistic that said if you're under 30, you're 2 times more likely to use AI in work. And to your point, eventually, how much is experience worth if you can be more and more productive through those tools because you understand them and you've embraced them? So that's an interesting shift. Is your value determined by the number of years or the output that you can deliver?
Yeah, and I think the other point around age is, I think one of the things, we both got young kids.
We do.
One of the things I find amazing, one of my favorite uses of AI is using, I think it's called Suno. It writes songs off of a prompt. So I use Copilot or Claude to write the lyrics to a song with my kids' names in them and their favorite cartoon, and then put those lyrics into the AI, and it will sort of create a song in whatever style you want.
So it's a winner every time.
I'm like, that's mind blowing. That's incredible. Yeah. They're like, why is it taking so long for this song to be created?
So it's so true. I've definitely had that experience myself. Yeah, it is super interesting. I think all of it's an interesting one, because I think when I was looking at AI and I was really sort of immersing myself to understand it as much as I possibly could, I kind of went through that process of looking at it and trying to determine, is this just another technology? Is this the internet in 1990? And the more and more I understood, the less I felt it was just another technology. Because you give that example of the ability to create a song. You look back 2 years ago, the output was so limited. But now you can really create any genre and they're good.
Properly
good. They're really good. I mean, I always use the Will Smith example. It took us 150 years of cinematography to get to Avatar. And it took AI 3 years to go from Will Smith looking part pasta, part human to a video that is indiscernible from reality. That rate of improvement is exponential, and it feels fundamentally different. And all those silly examples are absolute, proof of that.
Let's take a quick, now we're on the kids point. I just find it really interesting. Obviously, I think the sort of generation that's, us millennials, if you don't mind me lumping you into that.
I'm definitely a millennial. I'm definitely.
But we had to deal in a lot of ways. Actually, I think we might have just missed the worst of it. But we had social media and all of the sort of challenges that sort of brought. We're now having the age of AI, this technology that our kids are growing up with, and I mean particularly people coming through school, out of university at the minute. And if I think about, I'm a massive optimist as well, but if I have to put my bet on whether it's going to be good for society or bad, sadly, I'm probably in the bad camp. What role does business play? I think you touched on it on your apprenticeship program. Do we have now, as businesses, more of a expectation of ourselves to be a force for good in society, when there's so much of the tech and the politics and everything else is just leading us to such a challenging place?
I think first and foremost, you're a commercial vehicle, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to be commercially viable. And to be commercially viable, we have to be competitive. And to be competitive, we need to use AI. So first and foremost, as a business leader, your responsibility is to make sure that your business is competitive. Everything follows thereafter. So yes, I think first and foremost, it's lovely to be altruistic. I would love to think that at least my children think I'm a good guy, but ultimately we've got to be competitive, and then we can start to think about all of those things. I do think that young people have a huge amount to offer. I think the Gen Z, that follow us, and Gen Alpha that follow them, probably get a bad rap.
We did in our day as well.
Yeah, we did. We were snowflakes, remember? So I do think that and probably it's just cyclical, isn't it? But that I can see they've got a lot to offer. And I think my advice to anyone that is in that age bracket, entering work, learn as much as you can about those tools. Come into the workplace knowing arguably more, almost definitely more if you invest, than those that came before you that are in our generation. You have a real opportunity to be disruptive. The barriers of knowledge have been significantly lowered. So I think it's really important to remain competitive, to continue to invest in people and particularly young people. Yeah. So if that's altruistic, then I'll take the points.
I think that counts. I think that counts, man. And I really like what you're saying, and particularly around AI and young folks, it should be their competitive advantage.
100%.
And unlike, you rewind 5 years, it'd be almost impossible. Well, not impossible. It'd be very challenging for them to get an in-depth understanding of. We were talking about Salesforce before, right? They're not going to be able to train themselves in Salesforce because they're not going to be able to get a Salesforce license at that level. But the great thing about all these AI tools, they've all got free or almost free access. So there's so much they can do to learn and come in and then, apply their knowledge to businesses in turn. So got an eye on time here. I'd love to spend just a couple of minutes just really exploring what you're doing within MBA Group to make sure that you're staying on top of all the new tools, all the new innovation. How do you pace your adoption and transformation at the breakneck speed it needs to be these days?
I don't think we are. And I think most business leaders probably feel exactly the same way, because it's so difficult to maintain momentum. If you think about all of the obligations that a business like MBA Group faces or has to meet, we have to have very strong governance. We have to make sure that we are managing data in a responsible way. We have to ensure that our clients' data remains theirs and is not training broader models. So all of those things inevitably slow you down. We are not being held, in my opinion, to the same standard as those that are actually creating the technology, which is an interesting juxtaposition, if you like. So I think I never feel like we are. I think we do a good job in listening to our people, in creating very easy, clear routes for them to be able to express those ideas. And 350 brains are better than one. So I really strongly believe that in this environment, we should be doing a bit more listening than we are talking. Ironic, obviously, being here saying that, but I genuinely do. And I think we still have fleet of foot, because although we are a group of 350 people, we operate with semi-autonomous sort of teams that allow us to be nimble. So we have a product development team over in Portugal under Claudio that is a really strong team out there that can test and learn. There's a chap called Paul that leads our platform and our platform development team, and he's an incredibly smart bloke, and he has enough autonomy to be able to go and test and learn with people like Luke and Joao to do things. So I think when you break those teams down a little bit, you give them a little bit more dynamism. I think that's a really important ingredient, and I think listening to your people who are closer to the problem that needs solving is a second really important ingredient. Those are probably the two things that I lean on. Personally, I'm constantly looking at those things and making assessments of the tools in the marketplace, but that's not enough. You need your team to be as actively interested, really.
Yeah, I mean, God, couldn't think of better words to end our time together on. And if anyone is interested in following you, I love your LinkedIn post. I think you're one of the only guests I've had on who's more active on LinkedIn than I am. But just really interesting sort of tips and updates on AI. So we'll link that out in the episode notes as well. But Sami, thank you so much.
No, not at all. Thanks.
Coming on the show, sharing your experience with us.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you, mate.